I'll never forget the sequence of events that led me to having no other choice but to finally start reading Attack on Titan. It was 2015, and Attack on Titan, the anime, had already taken the world by storm. With one of the biggest premiere seasons in a long time, I, like many others, was hooked almost instantly. But at this point in time, I had never read a manga. I always knew it existed, I had seen a couple as a kid, but I've never been a huge fan of reading. And so it was a no-brainer to me that I would always just stick with anime. But one day, I just had to be curious. Attack on Titan is one of the best anime at putting little hints at something deeper than what were initially being shown. In this season, Commander Erwin had been introduced, and I always found his sense of resolve really intriguing. But I remember there was something I couldn't understand about his ideology and his personal desire for information. So me not knowing any better at the time, I decided to Google some of those questions about Erwin, and this had led me to Attack on Titan Wiki. At this point, and unknowingly, I had started reading manga information about Erwin's backstory, which led me down the deepest rabbit hole, learning about things about his father, which led me to learning more things about Eldia's history. I couldn't stop. I just found myself clicking and clicking and clicking on more characters, reading more and more about these different twists that I hadn't yet seen and would have never predicted off of season 1. And I'll never forget, the one that sealed the deal was learning about the Smiling Titan. The fact that, spoilers, the Smiling Titan had actually been Eren's father's ex-wife, who had told Grisha before they were turned into Titans by other humans that she would always come back to find him. And she ended up in that very spot where Grisha had lived, taking a big bite out of Eren's mom. I was hooked. There was nothing left I needed to know about the story. I just knew I needed to start reading and learning everything that I was missing that was going to actually take the anime 10 full years to finish. One of the biggest accomplishments I think that Attack on Titan has is that every little detail, every scene, every still image almost has a deeper meaning. It's a very magical experience when you realize that you're experiencing something just already has this intriguing nature at face value. But if you look closer, there's so many more things that you can piece together. It goes without saying that Attack on Titan probably had one of the best intro episodes and arcs in all of anime history. It both captures you with amazing action and character introductions, while at the same time, it keeps you thinking with these little hints that there could be something far deeper going on. There was always a twist, there was always a misrepresentation of what was actually going on, deeper motivations from characters, the slap in the face of realizing that maybe the side that we're on and rooting for could be wrong. Because Attack on Titan is one of those stories that reminds you that there's no wrong side in war, there's only sides. So there was all of that in addition to outstanding character work, writing, character development, and beautiful world building with mystery and suspense in every arc, in every episode. It was unheard of. This strong attention to detail is what I think gave Attack on Titan such longevity to still be at the pinnacle of hype that it was back in 2013, as it is 10 years later now in 2023. Attack on Titan will be cemented in history in many, many ways. Aside from just the numbers of being one of the most popular in this generation of anime by far, stories are now going to be able to look to Attack on Titan and be able to see how much you can get, how well a story can be done when it has a fleshed out vision in mind from the start. In many ways, I'm sure that did hinder Isayama though. When creating the manga, he probably had no idea that it turned out to be as humongous as it was. Imagine having a story that you're working on and it amassing this insane, incomprehensible level of publicity. And I've heard even him himself say, of course, that when creating a story and having it be met to such high standards, you'll want to change things. Imagine the immense pressure to perform at that level while still having to keep your original vision for the story in mind. But he did it. Now that Attack on Titan has ended, us as manga readers are finally able to see everyone as a whole's reaction to the ending. And it wasn't long ago, I definitely remember many people having a huge problem with the way it ended. I wasn't one of those people. I thought that there was no way he was going to end such a complex and popular anime that meant so much to millions and millions of people in a way that would please everyone. It just wasn't possible. But to my surprise, so far, mostly from the anime only, I've seen only positive reactions to the way it ended. And I'm really honestly not sure why that is. I really don't think that the anime had added too much more context than the manga did. I felt like the pacing for the finale may have even been faster than the manga. So that'll be always interesting to remember. I personally think the finale is beautiful and rich with meaning, just like the rest of the story. There are a few different ways that you can interpret it with it still being a satisfying ending, at least for our characters. But also, now that it's over, I can finally talk about probably my one gripe with the final grand arc towards the end of the story. The only character that I feel like was maybe a little bit underused and could have been fleshed out a lot more was Mikasa Ackerman. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Mikasa as a character, and I think she is given plenty of great moments that showcase who she is and what she stands for. Any interpretations of Mikasa that are just that her entire character is her love for Eren are just plain wrong. If you really pay attention, there's definitely a lot more to her than that, but I really expected that towards the end we would get a lot more dialogue and context for the way she thinks from her herself. Towards the end, we have characters like Armin and somewhat Eren speaking up for her and how she feels. The fact that she is one of the reasons that they were able to win in the end. But I just felt like with her being one of the trio, Eren, Mikasa, and Armin, criminally she was far more quiet and just doesn't get as much time to shine as those other two characters. Obviously Eren being the exception, but even he wasn't there just spewing out dialogue towards the end. A lot of the ending arcs featuring Eren is him being pretty stoic and mysterious. But I feel like I have a much more ground understanding for Eren's character than I do for Mikasa's personality and motivations. I don't think this is a deep issue. It doesn't harm the story too much, but it's just something I would have liked to see. And I figured I'd feature at least one of my problems with a near perfect story in this video. So thank you, Isayama. Please take your time to rest with your family. And please leave the story alone now. I say that not to be disrespectful in any way. I just mean that it is a masterpiece in its own right. And I know how tempting it may be to return to such a story that was so big, that's gonna be so controversial. Over the years, gonna be people to continue to theorize, continue to talk about it, and continue to beg for you to continue and add to what we were given at the end, which wasn't much. A lot of it was left ambiguous and slightly up to interpretation. But I think the only rightful way for Isayama to return to the story would be through anthology type series, maybe some more specials like the one we had with Annie, the one we have with Levi, or maybe he can add a one-off story to one of the future sequences were shown in the end credits, filling in those gaps in the timeline. But I think the core story is perfect, even with any imperfections you can come up with. And I personally would love to see what your next brand new manga turns out to be, and I really hope there's less pressure with that. Goodbye, Attack on Titan, one of the greatest war stories of all time. I've said that since 2015, and it really means a lot to me that I can continue to say that even after it's ended so many years later. For me to still be able to say that when it's complete is almost unheard of. It's really through experiencing art and creativity at the level of this that honestly reminds me that this world is worth living in. It would never not inspire me to see how others interpret the beauty of even things like tragedy. It really is beautiful that we're able to even exist and get to experience these things and just try to be better, try to help someone in need, try to live fulfilling and meaningful lives, trying to come together instead of repeating inevitable wars. It's a story and experience that I'm sure many of us will never forget, and that's well earned. Even that it was able to be completed at all is just thank you. It would take me many hours to talk more about the story and its characters, but I don't do video essays, and I'm sure there's many better ones out there. After 2 more years since the manga ended, and now 10 years later for the anime, it's finally actually over. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be leaving you with one of my favorite quotes from the story. Someone who can't sacrifice anything can't ever change anything.